You think you need more friends? You think you need to be seen at every party, every gathering, every social event. But what if I told you that the very thing you're chasing is the exact thing that's destroying your peace of mind? Most people spend their entire lives trying to fit in. They craft personas, wear masks, and desperately seek approval from people who are doing the exact same thing. It's like watching a room full of actors performing for other actors, and nobody realizes they're all pretending. The modern world has convinced us that isolation is dangerous, that being alone means something is wrong with us. But here's the truth nobody wants to hear. Constant socializing isn't connection, it's distraction. And it's keeping you from discovering who you actually are. Think about your last social interaction. Really think about it. How much of that conversation was genuine? How much of what you said was filtered through the question, what will they think of me? We've become so obsessed with managing our social image that we've forgotten what it feels like to simply exist without performance. Every word is calculated. Every gesture is measured. We're not socializing anymore. We're managing a brand called me, and it's exhausting. The ancient philosophers understood something that we've completely forgotten in our hyper-connected age. They recognized that true wisdom, true understanding of yourself and the world comes not from constant chatter and endless social engagement, but from silence, from solitude, from the courage to sit with yourself and face what's actually there. But we've built a society that's terrified of that silence. We fill every moment with noise, with notifications, with plans, with people, because the alternative is too frightening. The alternative is meeting ourselves, the illusion of social connection. Let's start with something uncomfortable. Most of your friendships are transactions. You might not want to admit it, but it's true. You meet someone, you exchange pleasantries, you follow each other on social media, and suddenly you're connected, but are you really? Or have you just added another name to a list of people you perform for? Real connection requires vulnerability. It requires showing up as you actually are, not as you think people want you to be. But vulnerability is risky. It opens you up to judgment, to rejection, to the possibility that people might not like what they see. So instead, we do something clever. We create a version of ourselves that's socially acceptable. We sand down our rough edges. We hide our weird thoughts. We laugh at jokes we don't find funny and nod along to opinions we don't share. And we call this socializing. But here's what happens when you spend your days managing how others perceive you. You lose touch with your actual self. Your authentic thoughts and feelings get buried under layers of social conditioning. You start to believe that the mask is the real you. You forget what it feels like to have an unfiltered thought, an unperformed moment, a genuine reaction that isn't shaped by how it will be received. The exhaustion you feel after social events isn't just physical tiredness. It's the deep fatigue that comes from constantly monitoring yourself, from playing a role, from being on stage every waking moment of your life. And the worst part, you've been doing it for so long that you don't even notice anymore. It feels normal. It feels like that's just what life is. But it's not. Life is so much bigger than the tiny box of social acceptability we've locked ourselves into. Think about the conversations you have. How many of them actually matter? How many leave you feeling enriched, expanded, changed in some meaningful way? Most social interaction is just noise. It's weather talk and gossip and complaints about things nobody can control. It's the same stories repeated with different details. It's performing the ritual of connection without any actual connection happening. You know this is true because of how you feel when you get home. Relief, that's what you feel. Relief that you can finally stop performing. Relief that you can take off the mask. Relief that you can just be without being judged. But that relief should tell you something important. It should tell you that something is deeply wrong with how you're spending your time and energy. The philosopher's path isn't about rejecting people entirely. It's about understanding that quality matters infinitely more than quantity. One real conversation with someone who sees you and accepts you as you are is worth more than 1,000 surface-level interactions with people who only know your social persona. But our culture doesn't value depth, it values breadth. It values having hundreds of friends on social media and being invited to every event and never spending a Friday night alone. So we chase breadth. We collect people like trophies. We measure our worth by how full our social calendars are. And we wonder why we feel so empty inside. The trap of social validation. Here's a hard truth. You're addicted to what other people think about you. We all are. It's not entirely your fault. Humans evolved in small tribes where social acceptance literally meant survival. Being cast out meant death. So we developed incredibly sensitive mechanisms for detecting approval and disapproval. We became experts at reading facial expressions, tone of voice, body language. We learned to constantly scan our environment for signs of social danger. But here's the problem. Those mechanisms that helped us survive in tribes of 50 people are now activated constantly in a world of millions. Your brain treats a lack of likes on your post the same way it would treat being rejected by your tribe. It feels like a threat to your survival. So you adjust. You craft your next post more carefully. You say things you think will get approval rather than things you actually believe. You become a puppet dancing to the tune of imagined judgment. And it's not just social media. This happens in every social interaction. When you're at a party, part of your brain is constantly monitoring how you're being received. Are they laughing at your jokes? Are they paying attention when you talk? Do they seem interested or bored? You're running this analysis in the background of every conversation, adjusting your performance in real time based on the feedback you're receiving. This is exhausting, but more than that, it's tragic because while you're so focused on managing how others perceive you, you're missing your actual life. You're missing the chance to discover what you actually think about things, what you actually feel, what actually interests you when nobody else's opinion matters. The validation you get from socializing is like junk food for your soul. It tastes good in the moment. It gives you a little hit of pleasure. But it doesn't nourish you. It doesn't help you grow. And the more you consume it, the more you need it. You become dependent on external approval for your sense of self-worth. And that's a prison with invisible bars. Think about how much of your life is shaped by this need for social validation. The career you chose because it sounds impressive. The opinions you hold because they're socially acceptable in your circle. The hobbies you pretend to enjoy because they make you seem interesting. The places you go, the things you buy, the way you dress. How much of it is actually yours? How much of it is just carefully calculated to earn approval from people whose approval shouldn't matter? The philosopher's insight is simple but revolutionary. Your worth isn't determined by what other people think of you. It can't be, because other people's thoughts about you are based on limited information, personal biases, and their own insecurities. They're seeing you through the filter of their own issue. Their approval or disapproval says more about them than it does about you. But we've forgotten this. We've made the catastrophic error of believing that social validation is the same thing as self-worth. So we chase it endlessly, never realizing that we're chasing something that can never satisfy the hunger we're actually feeling. The power of solitude. Let's talk about what happens when you stop. When you actually spend time alone, not scrolling through your phone, not watching videos, not filling the silence with podcasts and music, just alone with your thoughts. Most people can't handle this for more than a few minutes. The discomfort is too intense. The urge to reach for distraction is overwhelming. But that discomfort, that's where the real work happens. That's where you meet yourself. Not the curated version you present to the world, but the actual you. The one with weird thoughts and unresolved fears and dreams you've been too afraid to acknowledge. The one who's been buried under years of social conditioning and performance. Solitude isn't loneliness. Loneliness is feeling disconnected and wanting connection. Solitude is choosing to be alone because you recognize the value of it. In solitude, you don't have to perform. You don't have to manage anyone's perception of you. You can let your thoughts wander wherever they want to go. You can explore ideas that don't fit neatly into socially acceptable categories. You can be weird and contradictory and uncertain, and that's okay because nobody is watching. This is where creativity lives. This is where insight emerges. Think about every major breakthrough in human history, every work of art that changed culture, every scientific discovery that shifted our understanding of reality. Most of them didn't come from committee meetings or brainstorming sessions or social gatherings. They came from individuals who spent significant time alone with their thoughts, wrestling with problems, following curiosity into strange territories. But we've lost this. We've created a culture that treats solitude like a disease to be cured. If you're alone, something must be wrong. You must be depressed, or antisocial, or broken in some way. So people fill every moment with social activity, not because they enjoy it, but because they're afraid of what it means if they don't. The truth is that solitude is where you develop the strength to stand on your own. When you spend all your time seeking validation from others, you become weak. You become dependent. You lose the ability to trust your own judgment, your own perceptions, your own values. You need constant feedback from the crowd to know if you're doing okay. But when you cultivate solitude, something shifts. You start to develop an internal compass. You learn to distinguish between your authentic desires and the desires that have been implanted by social conditioning. You develop the confidence to disagree, to go your own way, to pursue things that matter to you, even if they don't make sense to others. This doesn't mean becoming a hermit. It doesn't mean rejecting all human connection. It means understanding that your relationship with yourself is the foundation of everything else. If that relationship is weak, if you don't know yourself, if you're constantly performing for an imagined audience, then every other relationship in your life will be shallow and unfulfilling. The practice is simple, but difficult. Start spending time alone, not as a punishment, not because you couldn't find social plans, but as a deliberate choice. Sit with yourself. Let thoughts arise without immediately distracting yourself from them. Notice the discomfort. Notice the urge to check your phone, to reach out to someone, to fill the silence, and don't give in to it. At first, it will be hard. Your mind will race. You'll feel anxious. You'll generate all kinds of reasons why you need to be doing something else. But if you stay with it, something remarkable happens. The noise starts to settle, the performance drops away, and you start to hear a quieter voice, your own voice, the one that's been there all along, waiting for you to listen. The cost of constant connection. Every time you say yes to a social obligation, you're saying no to something else. You're saying no to time alone with your thoughts. You're saying no to pursuing a project that genuinely interests you. You're saying no to rest, to reflection, to the deep work that actually creates meaning in your life. But we don't think about it this way. We think that being busy and social is impressive. We think it means we're successful, popular, living life to the fullest. But look closely at the people who are always socializing. Really look at them. Do they seem deeply fulfilled? Do they have a strong sense of who they are? Do they pursue their own path with confidence? Or do they seem scattered, anxious, always looking for the next event, the next distraction, the next hit of social validation? The modern world has created this bizarre situation where being constantly connected to others has made us more disconnected from ourselves than ever before. We have more ways to communicate than any generation in history, yet we feel more isolated. We have more friends on social media than our grandparents had in their entire village, yet we feel more alone. Something is fundamentally broken in how we approach connection. The cost of constant socializing isn't just the time it takes, it's the opportunity cost. It's what you could have created, discovered, or become if you had spent that time differently. Think about how many hours you've spent at events you didn't enjoy, with people you don't really care about, having conversations that meant nothing. Add up those hours. What could you have done with that time? You could have mastered a skill. You could have written a book. You could have deepened your understanding of something that truly fascinates you. You could have developed a practice that brings genuine peace to your life. Instead, you spent it performing for people who were also performing, in a strange dance of mutual pretense that left everyone unsatisfied. And here's the thing, most people know this. Deep down, they know that their constant socializing isn't fulfilling them. They feel the hollowness of it, but they keep doing it anyway because they don't know how to stop. They're afraid that if they step off the treadmill, they'll be left behind. They'll miss out. They'll be forgotten. But what are you actually missing? Events that will be forgotten in a week, conversations that leave no lasting impact, the chance to be seen by people who aren't really looking. When you're old and reflecting on your life, do you think you'll regret missing that party? Or will you regret not spending more time discovering who you actually are and what you're actually capable of? The philosopher's perspective is radical in its simplicity. Protect your time like it's the most valuable thing you have, because it is. Every hour you give to social obligations that don't feed your soul is an hour you'll never get back. And the tragedy is that most people give away the majority of their hours without even thinking about it. They let other people's expectations and society's demands dictate how they spend their one wild and precious life. There's another cost too. Constant connection prevents you from processing your experiences. You need empty space to make sense of things. You need time for insights to emerge, for lessons to sink in, for meaning to develop. But if you're always moving from one social engagement to the next, always consuming new information, always surrounded by noise, there's no space for that processing to happen. So you end up living on the surface of your life. You have experiences, but you don't integrate them. You learn things, but you don't apply them. You feel things, but you don't understand them. You're like a computer with too many programs running at once, always on the verge of crashing, never performing optimally, reclaiming your inner authority. So what do you do with all this? How do you actually change? Because understanding the problem is only the first step. The hard part is going against everything your culture has taught you about what a good life looks like. Start by getting honest about your social life. Look at your relationships and social commitments without the filter of what you think you should feel. How many of these connections actually nourish you? How many leave you feeling drained? How many are you maintaining out of obligation or fear rather than genuine care? This isn't about cutting everyone out of your life. It's about becoming selective. It's about recognizing that your time and energy are limited resources, and you get to choose how to spend them. You don't owe anyone your presence. You don't owe anyone your energy. You get to decide what feeds your soul and what depletes it. The next step is harder. Start saying no, not with elaborate explanations or apologies, just a simple no. Watch what happens. Watch how uncomfortable it feels. Watch the guilt that arises. Watch the fear that people will judge you or abandon you. These feelings are real, but they're not facts. They're the result of years of conditioning that taught you your value comes from being available and agreeable. But here's what actually happens when you start saying no to things that don't serve you. You create space. Space for the things that actually matter. Space for solitude. Space for deep work. Space for genuine connection with the few people who truly see you. And gradually something shifts. You start to feel less scattered, less anxious, more grounded in yourself. You'll notice that the people who really care about you will respect your boundaries. They'll understand when you need time alone. They won't take it personally when you decline invitations. And the people who get upset, the ones who demand your constant presence and attention, Those are the ones who are benefiting from your people-pleasing behavior. Those are the transactional relationships you're better off without. Build a practice of solitude into your daily life. It doesn't have to be dramatic. Start with 20 minutes a day of sitting quietly without distractions. No phone, no music, no book. Just you and your thoughts. Notice what comes up. Notice the discomfort. Notice the urge to escape. And stay with it anyway. As you do this, you'll start to develop a different relationship with yourself. You'll start to trust your own judgment more. You'll become less dependent on external validation. You'll develop the courage to pursue things that genuinely interest you, even if they don't fit the narrative of who others think you should be. This is what the ancient philosophers understood. True freedom doesn't come from having more choices or more connections or more experience. It comes from knowing yourself so deeply that you're not tossed around by every opinion, every trend, every social expectation. It comes from developing such a strong center that you can interact with the world without losing yourself in it. You'll find that as you become more comfortable with solitude, your social interactions actually improve. You're no longer desperately seeking validation, so you can show up more authentically. You're not performing anymore, so genuine connection becomes possible. The few relationships you maintain become deeper and more meaningful, because they're based on truth rather than pretense. This path isn't easy. It goes against everything you've been taught. It requires courage to step out of the constant social stream and forge your own way. It requires strength to sit with the discomfort of being alone with yourself. It requires wisdom to distinguish between the voice of your authentic self and the voices of social conditioning that have been implanted in your mind. But it's worth it, because on the other side of all that discomfort and fear is something rare and precious. Yourself. Not the version you think you should be, not the carefully curated persona you present to the world, but your actual self, wild and weird and wonderful and uniquely yours. And once you find that, once you build a real relationship with that person, everything changes. You stop needing constant validation because you validate yourself. You stop feeling lonely in solitude because you're finally in good company. You stop chasing connection because you've found the deepest connection there is, the one with yourself. This is the philosopher's promise. Not that life will become easier or that all your problems will disappear, but that you'll have the inner resources to navigate whatever comes. That you'll have a foundation that can't be shaken by other people's opinions or society's demands, that you'll finally be free. The choice is yours to make. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep chasing the hollow satisfaction of social validation. Keep performing for an audience that isn't really watching. Or step off that treadmill and discover what's possible when you have the courage to be alone with yourself. If this resonated with you, watch the next video where we go even deeper.